Have you ever wanted to conduct good quality academic research? Maybe you're a student and you need to write some papers or produce a thesis. Maybe you're an instructor and you want to research areas that you're interested in to provide more enriched teaching. Maybe you are already doing academic research and you're preparing articles for publication and you're just looking for some ideas. Well, in this video, I'd like to share with you 7 steps that I like to take when I'm conducting any type of research. There's a lot of noise out there, there's a lot of information out there, but the ability to take that information in a meaningful way and actually produce meaningful research from it can sometimes be a bit challenging. And in this video, I'm going to show you that process that I like to use, which I hope you'll look at and you'll comment on down below in the comments, and we can share ideas because that's really the heart of research, sharing ideas. Hello everyone, my name is Frank and I've been teaching at a post-secondary institution for over 26 years. I have a Master's of Arts in Learning and Technology, and here on this channel, we focus on how we can use technology for teaching and learning and being more productive. We look at technology through an educational lens. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you're coming back for another video, hey, welcome back. I'm really glad that you came back. Now, in this video, I'll show some of the things that I do during each phase and some of the tools that I use. But I'm not going to go super deep into the tools. This video is more the overview of the process. I will create some videos on some of the tools that I show in this video. I'll do some more in-depth review of those tools, and I'll make sure to link those down below and link some of them at the end of the video as well. This is more of a process overview as opposed to a tool set overview. But I do like the tools, and we will talk about those in some other videos as well because, you know, technology. I love technology. What can I say? The first step is to identify a research topic. This may seem like a pretty easy thing to do. If you're interested in something, that's what you want to research. But when coming up with your topic of research, it is important to be broad enough that you can find material on that topic, but also narrow enough so that you're not overwhelmed with the amount of information about that topic. And here we're talking about doing research on something where maybe some primary research has been done, maybe some experimentation has been done. There is some material out there that you can review, that you can look at. So you want to make sure that it is broad enough that you can find material on the topic, but also narrow enough so that you don't have so much material you can't possibly get through it all. If I'm looking to narrow down the question that I'm going to have for research, still remaining broad enough to have some content to look at, I might go to a search engine. And let's say, for example, I want to do virtual reality in education. I'm not sure exactly what aspect of virtual reality in education I'm interested in, but I know I want to look at VR in education. I could go to a search engine like Google. The challenge here is I'll get a lot of definitions, I'll get a lot of information from different companies that are sponsoring VR in education, but I'm not really feeling like I'm going to be able to formulate a good research question out of this initial search. I could refine the search a little bit more, I could look at Google Scholar, but really a search engine is going to expose me to the entire internet, including a lot of commercial resources or a lot of opinion pieces. I'm looking to do some good quality research. I want to go a little bit deeper. So I might go into a tool like an AI tool like ChatGPT. The challenge is that with ChatGPT, if I go, can you tell me about VR in education? Now we can go a little bit more deep into prompt engineering here, but I'll say about VR in education and some areas to research about it. So I could put that in. It's not a very super well designed engineered prompt, but you can see here, I'm starting to get a lot of synthesis of information here. Again, I get some definition, I get some ideas. Here are some areas. This isn't bad. I'm starting to get a little bit more of an idea of some of the things that I can do. The challenge that I have here, however, is that although this gives me a nice outline and I can start having a conversation with this AI assistant to start refining my search, you'll notice that it is pulling information from the internet. It's not actually allowing me to look at scholarly articles or previous research that's done. This is where a tool comes in that I really like. I've started playing around with. They're not sponsoring this video. I'm hoping to get the pro version at some point and maybe go a little bit deeper into this product, but it's called Consensus AI. So here, if I was to ask the question, I want to research VR in education, it's going to give me a little bit more ability to refine the type of research question I'm going to ask. It's going to give me a lot of the definitions that the other searches allowed me to do. So it's going to talk about, the definition. It's going to talk a little bit, it's not talking. It's going to show me some of the different, things around benefits and different specific fields, language, health, and medicine. But what's really interesting here is it's going to generate some citations for me and some academic papers. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail right now. I'll look at this more when I come back and talk about step 2, which foreshadowing is the literature review. But you can see here that it's giving me information about where these articles came from, how cited they are, if they're, the credibility of the journal that they're in. I can do a little bit more here in terms of seeing some of the published material in academia that relates to the topic that I'm interested in studying and learning a little bit more about. And I can continue to load more and more results. Plus I can get citations so I can actually go and grab these articles themselves, which will bring us to step 2. Step 2 is to conduct a literature review. This is where we're going to go out. We're going to take a look at what's been written about the subject, some of the different research that's been done around the subject, and we're going to get a feel for what's happening in the area that we're interested in researching. This is something where we can go to a library, we can search through journals, we can look for different types of articles, we can look for books, any type of resource that we might need that will give us a bigger perspective on what's already been done in the particular area that we're researching. If you're looking for academic resources, you need to go to where the academic resources are being held, which typically is a library. So libraries are wonderful places. They often contain a lot of material that only exists at the library. Increasingly, a lot of material is being put into electronic format, and we are able to access the libraries in a remote digital manner. But there's still a lot of stuff that's actually kept in libraries, depending on the type of research you're doing. A great example of this is I used to work in museums, and in the archives we had things that related to the town that were only available through the archives. So we would have researchers come in and they would have to look at those actual physical objects in the archive of the museum. But that's the past. I mean, we have a lot of stuff that's available online now. For example, here I am using academic writing software. In this case, I'm using a tool called Nota Bene, and I'm actually using a plugin for that tool that allows me to connect up electronically to many different libraries through an open library protocol. Don't worry too much about this. Your librarian can help you with all of this type of research. Now, in this case, I'm connecting up to different resources, Library of Congress. You can see I've got the University of Ottawa, University of Victoria, University of British Columbia. Almost all of the different universities will allow us to come in electronically. If you're a student, you'll have a student account. Go and talk to your friendly librarian. Same applies, obviously, if you're doing academic research or if you're a faculty member. There's a lot of resources there to help you find this material. One of the things that I really like, however, is again, the new software that I'm working with, which is Consensus. So this here actually allowed me, I was pretty impressed by it because it went through and grabbed a ton of different resources for me that I could then start using as part of my literature review. So here with each of the citations that it provides, it gives me a name of the different article that it found. It gives me the type of methods that were used in this particular research article. So here we have a systematic review was used. So it's a summary of the scientific literature. If I scroll down, there's a meta-analysis here. So this is a article paper that used a meta-analysis in terms of virtual reality for health professionals in education. It also will rate the journals. So here we can see that we have a lot of citations for this particular article, And we can see that this particular journal is considered through a size score as being a very reputable journal. This is an incredibly valuable synthesis of these different articles and how they fit into the literature. You can go and do some other things when you're conducting your literature review, both in a library and in this software here, where I can refine my searches. So if I was to go in here, you can see I can copy all my citations and start pulling that into my next phase. I'll talk about that in a bit. But I can go in here and I can do things like look at the history of what I've done. I can go in and I can bookmark things in here. And if I'm doing any type of search in here, I can go in, look at the different results that I have. I can go and grab additional results in here. So if I want to get a deeper understanding, or if I just want to, I'm starting to see what's been written about virtual reality in education, and I'm going to be able to refine my search. I'm going to be doing another video just entirely on this particular software because I am quite impressed by it. But you can see that I'm now starting to gather all of the different articles, maybe some books, some journal articles, and I can really refine by year. I can refine by whether it's a meta-analysis, whether it's a systematic review, whether it's actually research. I don't think we'll have anything in here that'll be beyond systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And there's a literature review that was done. That's an observational study. So there's some actually really interesting results that have, now I'm getting excited about the actual topic. This is a video about the steps. So you would gather all of this information and you would start pulling it all in. And now it's reading. You're going to be reading this material and you're going to be pulling the information from this material. This is where a tool such as an AI-based tool can really help you with a synthesis of quality material so that you can speed up the literature review process. I like to take a lot of my annotations on my iPad, so I use an application called UPDF. It allows me to create scans and create new folders, and there's a lot of ways I can work with PDFs using this application. I'll create a dedicated folder for this VR research project that I'm doing, but what's really important is I want to make sure that I put the original documents into a shared drive, like an iCloud drive. So I'm going to create a folder on research in researching VR in education. And this is where I want to basically home all of my documents. So I have my original PDF in there. That's where I'm going to pull it from. So then I'll have the PDFs that I'm working with. I get a lot of rich, different types of annotation that I can do, huge amount of color palettes. And I'll do additional videos on UPDF, both for the desktop and the iPad, as well as some other applications here. This is just how I'm using it for literature review. I'm doing things like underlining, taking notes, looking at information that I want to revisit as I do more of the research and connectivity, take all sorts of interesting notes. There's a lot that I can do with this particular application. I can highlight sections of the document that I want to make sure I pay particular attention to. I can do different line styles, different color lines. And I'm a big fan of color coding, so I might underline certain things in one color, and then I might go and change the color. Let's say I'm working with something that has to do with finance, so anything that does with costing or numerical, I can put my ideas to different codes or different colors, and there's a lot of different ways that I can work with this. The key, however, is it is very important that I share this document, or I have this document not just on my iPad. If I save it, it'll save it to the iPad itself, which can be useful, but what's really useful is when I can extend this out to other applications across my various different computers. So again, I could create a dedicated folder, but what I really want to do here is I want to take the annotated copy of the PDF and I want to save it as a separate copy. Usually I call it the exact same name, but I say annotated. And I can see that I have both copies of this document here, the original plus the annotated version. And then I'm going to go into the annotated version, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to share it out, but I'm going to share it onto the iCloud drive. So you can see here, I'll go in to share it. Now you'll remember that the original was already from the iCloud drive, but this one here, I want to go to the iCloud drive. I want to go to the researching VR in education. So I'll scroll down to find that folder that I have here that I created. And you can see here, I'm going to save it as a copy. Notice the only document in there was the original, and now I've got it on my iCloud Drive. The benefit of having it on the iCloud Drive is now here I am on my computer using an application that I like called Scrintal. So this is a combination of rich note-taking plus mind mapping that I can use Scrintal for. There's a lot to it, but it uses markdown language. So I'm going to be able to go through and do things like insert a PDF or upload a PDF. So I'm going to go in and upload. And again, this is why I needed it on that cloud drive, because I annotated it on my iPad, but now I've saved it on the cloud drive and there's that copy. Now that PDF is here, and I can do all sorts of advanced note-taking and connectivity here, where I can go through, do things like connect concepts to each other, move them around. As my research becomes more complex, this allows me to see what I've done in terms of annotations, but I can also add much more rich notes here. Plus there's some cool new features. I'll do a video on Scrintal. So let's take a look at step 3. Step 3 is to formulate the question or the hypothesis that you are going to research. This is an area that I personally find challenging because I get so interested in the subject as a whole that sometimes it's hard to narrow down to just a question or a single hypothesis, but it is important because that's what's going to focus your research. It doesn't mean that you can't come back to the literature review that you did and look for other avenues of exploration, but for each research project that you do, you should narrow it down to a question or a hypothesis that you are going to research fully as you can, and then you can move on to more research projects so that literature review won't go to waste if it's in a subject area that you're really interested in. Ideally, through the literature review process, you've discovered some gaps in the research that you'd like to fill or some questions you'd like to explore a little further. This will help you refine your question, your hypothesis, but it's not always that easy. Sometimes this is where you may want to have a conversation with someone and discuss what your ideas are, get their feedback. Especially if you're a younger researcher, if you have a mentor or somebody that can help guide you in the questions that you might explore a little bit further, that can challenge you and ask you whether there's enough there for you to actually do the research or to shape the research if it's going to be more complex. Again, I'm going to use the Consensus app here, this Consensus AI. In Consensus AI, one of the things that we can do is we can go into specific areas, and you can see here that under the related section, there's actually just a question. Is virtual reality effective for learning outcomes in higher education? This itself could be the formation of a question that I might want to research. So if I go in here, there's a neat feature where it'll give some consensus in here. So this is based upon the articles. It says there is a consensus that, is it effective for learning outcomes? 75% of the articles that it saw said yes. Some said there's a possibility. Notice that there are 12 papers. And this is kind of interesting. This is just from the search, right? It's not a perfect reflection as it has the disclaimer here as well. But when you see this type of consensus, then you are not trying to lead your research, but you can identify or help identify gaps where you may want to test the consensus or where you may want to go into a different aspect or a different lens against the consensus. I'm getting into the whole sort of concept of, what does it mean to be inquisitive at this point? But you can see that there's a lot of good information in here that can not just help me with the papers that I retrieved, but it can also help me with maybe starting to think about the question or the hypothesis that I specifically want to test. And I did want to mention here that also as part of the gathering process, we can go in and we can have this feature to pull, for example, the full PDF of this to summarize the findings from the paper. There's a lot of really interesting features. Again, I'll do maybe a more broad video on this tool as a whole. You can see that I'm using it quite a bit during the first phases of my research because it does speed up the process quite a bit. But there are some other tools that I'll be using a little later on in this video. Step 4 is an interesting step in the 7-step process that I'm sharing with you in this video, in that we don't always do step 4. We don't always go to this level within our research. Step 4 is to create a research methodology and decide how we're going to conduct our own research. And it could be that once we've looked at the area and conducted a literature review and looked at the question that we want to answer, we determine that that question has been answered by others that have conducted different experiments to prove that question or that hypothesis. We may want to repeat their experiments to see if we get the same results, or we may simply say that it's been repeated and we just want to reflect upon our opinions and thoughts about the research that's been done. But if we are going to progress and do our own research, then in step 4 is where we determine how we're going to conduct that research. Are we going to conduct that research through surveys? Are we going to look at different types of methodologies for conducting experiments? How will those experiments generate data? How will we gather that data? Now, it can be very complex to design a good research project. There's a lot of different domains of knowledge where we might need specialized equipment. We might have specialized ways to gather data and information. And the research methodology that we use is used in order to do that. Step number 5, gathering the data. So let's say for our little sample that I'm using here, that we are gathering data using surveys. Now, that's a very common way of gathering data, especially for qualitative research, where I want to find out people's perceptions. I might want to find different ways of gathering the data about how they perceive certain things like VR in education. We can go into a lot of complexity, but that's going back to step 4 in terms of how we design our research gathering. But the point is, we will always reach a point where we need to start collecting the data. And when we're collecting data, we have to do so accurately, we have to do so efficiently, and we have to do so ethically. So there's a lot of different things that are considered when we're collecting the data, because our data should be collected in such a way that anybody could examine the data and get the same results that we got. And they could use that data to actually challenge us in our assumptions and to challenge our research, because that data would be available for them to explore and interpret as well. So when we talk about collecting the data, we're just trying to land it somewhere where it can be accessed, potentially shared, and where we can work with it. So here's an example where I have an Excel spreadsheet, and I've collected survey results from 100 participants to determine what was their perception about VR in education. And full disclosure, this is not an actual research project. This is dummy data that I generated in order to have something to show here. But in the real world, this could take months, this could take years in order to gather all of these survey results. I can use tools to help speed that process up a little bit. I can even look at gathering data through things like sensors, or, well, there's a lot of ways to gather data. But let's say I've done surveys, and let's say I've landed everything here on Excel. So you can see here that I've created a table. I've got the participants' number. I've got their perception, whether it's positive, neutral, or negative. I have 5 questions, question 1 through 5. Where they rated something on a scale of 1 to 5. Now, when I take this table, I can use certain tools like CoPilot in order to ask different questions about this data. So I could go in here and I could say, for example, I would like to understand this data. So I could do a search to see if there's a way that the artificial intelligence can come in here, maybe show me some insights about the data. Now, it is very important, and it does say right here on CoPilot, that AI-generated content may be incorrect. So we shouldn't think of AI as replacing what we need to do, but it maybe can help augment a little bit of our analysis and get us started looking at the data maybe graphically. So I'll add this to a new sheet. So here's an example of where we've got the participants. We've got the count of participants that rated question number 5 as a 4. Now this is just question number 5. So I might want to do this for question 1, 2, 3, and 4 to see where things were rated. So in this case here, the most popular answer was 4 out of 5. Next it was 3 out of 5, and so on. So this might be the start of me being able to analyze the data and start creating some visuals on the data. You'll notice also within Excel I have an Analyze Data tab here where I can go in. In this case here, there's nothing on the pivot table there, but if I go to the sheet here and do an Analyze Data, we'll see. So you can see here it's working with question 5, where, what was the mood of the participants through. Positive is the majority, so I could put that in. Here's an example where I could go in, create another chart here in terms of the distribution of the answers across the different participants. So you can see that I can start building up some interpretation of the data, but I do want to caution you that we shouldn't replace our own critical thinking and judgment with this. We're now in step 6, by the way, which is analyzing the data. I guess I skipped a little bit ahead. So we've gathered and collected the data. We're at step 6 where we're analyzing the data. We've been here for a few moments. So the idea is I'm analyzing the data. I'm starting to synthesize things. I could use other tools and gather all of this information into something like my Scrintal environment. So we want to start now both collecting and analyzing the data to start understanding exactly what happened with our research and what our research is showing us. And the last step when we've done all of this work with our research is to share our research. We want to be able to write our research findings in a format that others can take the information and work with it in the way that we took information from others and worked with it. So it's a cycle of academic research where we research, other people research, and we all build upon the body of knowledge around subjects that help us become better at whatever we're trying to do. So writing academic papers is a whole subject unto itself, and I use a number of different tools for this as well. Earlier in the video, you saw me using Nota Bene, which is a great academic writing software. There's other writing software that I use that takes advantage of artificial intelligence to help me structure and put together some of my ideas. And I will put a word of caution there as well. We cannot use artificial intelligence to do the writing for us. We can only use it as a guide or a tool in the same way that I might use something like Grammarly in order to check my spelling or my syntax. We want to make sure that the voice of our research is accurate to the research we did, answers the question that we asked, and contains our own voice in presenting it to others. If this video was useful, give it a like, share with others, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.